Hey folks, as you can see, in this video I'm going to be making a tier list of all of the different delves and their variants, and this is specifically when it comes to leveling from 70 to 80 in the War Within. So if you are not familiar, doing delves is now one of the best ways to level from 70 to 80, or rather, more specifically, the end completion for the quests is one of the best ways to level through delves, because they give 90,000 experience, at least at level 70, that will scale up a bit as you level, and that is a really big chunk of experience relative to how efficient it is to complete these delves. That being said, not all delves are created equal. Some are really fast, some are really slow, and one of the things that I want to focus on in my 70 to 80 leveling guide, which should be out in the next day or two, is which delves you should actually be focusing on completing. Because despite the fact that these quests are, generally speaking, really good and worth doing, there are a handful of delve variants that are just really bad, and you just shouldn't waste your time with them. And also, if you really want to maximize your efficiency, it might be better to wait for a day until all of the S or A tier delve variants are active, and then you can just run all of them at once instead of, only doing a handful of them, waiting another day, etc. This will just let you make better decisions about how you spend your time, because I have done every single delve many times, way too many times, so I know enough about them at this point to, I would say, mostly accurately rank every single one of them. Now, on that note, you'll notice I have all these different little icons down here, and this is going to be a little bit confusing initially, because you might be wondering, what the hell is this? Why are they all these little different icons? What does the ABC stand for? Does that have anything to do with the tiers? And I thought about renaming the tiers, but we're just going to keep things as simple as possible, and I will quickly explain to you what this actually means. So we're going to head over to World of Warcraft. I'm logged into my character right now. You'll see here the Underkeep has this little icon for its achievement thing for the stories, every single story variant, which is when you walk into a delve, you can see here, sometimes it just tells you to kill kobolds in Kriegval's Rest, the one that I'm currently in. This time I have to talk to Kriegval or whatever. And if I go down to wherever this one is, Kriegval's Rest, this is Lost Keepsakes. So sometimes swarming kobolds will just say, kill X amount of kobolds. Sometimes you come in here and Tak-Rethan Abyss is sitting around. You talk to him and you do some objectives. And while these are all within the same delve, in this case Kriegval's Rest, every single one of them is different in terms of the objectives that it tasks you with. And these are not all comparable. Some of them are really fast and some of them are really slow. By like minutes in many cases. And minutes within the context of a speedrun adds up to be a lot. So as you can see, what I've done is I've taken all of these achievement icons, I've turned them into little fancy things for the tier list over here, and I am going to be ranking all of them by their variants, which, for example, you can see here I have A, I have B, I have C. This is the Dread Pit icon. So if I go back into WoW and I go up to wherever the Dread Pit one is over here, I'm going to be going from left to right. So A, Dread Pit would be Lost Gems, B, Dread Pit would be Smashing Skarden, and C, Dread Pit would be Kobold Kidnapping. Now, I know it's taking a little bit of time for me to explain exactly how the tier list is going to work, how the rankings are going to be, but there's no easy way to communicate, this is the icon that represents Smashing Skarden in the Dread Pit. There's just too much complexity there, and I think, all things considered, this is a rather elegant way to represent every single variant of every single delve. This is what I went with. This is what we're going with. It allows me to get little fancy icons that I can drag and drop onto the tier list. And I did make all these myself in Photoshop. I'm quite proud of them. I think they turned out pretty well. Taking a big sip of coffee before I start. Okay, so on that note, since Dread Pit alphabetically is the first one, we're going to start with that. It's the first one on here. So real quick, let me hop back over to WoW. I know I did just read it, but I want to make it clear. The three variants for Dread Pit is Lost Gems, Smashing Skarden, and Kobold Kidnapping. Now, the Lost Gems one, if you've never done it, you get an extra action button that you run around and you have to kind of vacuum up gem piles. Then after you vacuum up the gem piles, you get to blast a bunch of webs out of the way. You get like this little electric zapper. You kill 3 big Nerubian mobs, and then you kill the final boss. It is relatively good, but there are a few things involved. The main advantage is that the vacuuming up the gems part doesn't require you to actually stop and interact with them. You just press the button, run over the gems, and you get credit for it. So you can kind of zoom through the first section. It's pretty good. Smashing Skardin is similar. You get an extra action button that stuns all of these little Skardin in the area and makes them take increased damage. So you stun a big pack of Skardin, blow them all up, move on to the next one. This is very, very good. As you will see, Smashing Skardin is one of the best delve variants, period. Kobold Kidnapping, while not bad, does require a lot of interacting with little objects. So you first need to free these two mobs, then get chucked to the back end of the Dread Pits. You start on the opposite end, and you slowly work your way through the delve, and you have to click on these little web wraps to free kobolds, and then get back to the end, and then fight the final boss, as usual with most delves. The thing about this one is that you can actually tell which ones are the kobolds because the little web wraps are lit on fire. So that makes it a little bit easier to know which ones you should be freeing. But even still, there are a lot of web-wrapped kobolds that you need to free, so it's not the fastest delve variant. So, with all of that being said, keeping in mind that Dread Pit A, this is gems, this is Skardin, this is kobolds, I'm going to put the gems into A tier, I'm going to put Skardin into S tier, and I'm going to put the kobolds into B tier. The best thing about Dread Pit is that if you get the absolute worst variant, which is kobolds, it is still an okay delve. I can tell you right now that I believe D delves should never be run. Just if this is the active variant, do not even waste your time with it. It is less efficient than just running a dungeon or completing miscellaneous side quests. C delves are barely worth doing. I would only really justify doing them if it's something that's kind of like in the area. Let's say you're in Hollowfall and all of the surrounding delves are also really good. Maybe you just waste your time and say, fuck it, I'll do a C delve. If you're maybe a tiny bit of experience away from hitting level 80 and you don't want to go all the way out of your way and do one dungeon, just, okay, fuck it, I'll do a C delve. B delves, I would say, are worth doing, but you're not thrilled about them, especially if there are better options in the upper tiers. You might just want to wait for a different day, like in the case of Dread Pit, if the Kobold one is up. Probably just wait until one of these other two is up. A tier ones, always worth doing if this is active. You should definitely be doing this as part of your leveling. Set aside time for it. Make sure that you get around to it because it will be better than any dungeons. And S tier, I'm going to reserve for only a handful that are very, very, very good. Smashing Skardin is notable, not just because it's very fast. It's just one objective, run around, kill Skardin, kill the final boss. But in addition to just being very quick, the Skardin that you kill actually give normal mob kill experience, and there's a lot of them. So there's actually a strategy specifically for this delve variant where a lot of people kill the first few packs and then reset the delve and go again. And I've tested this a bit on my own. I do not believe that it is faster than doing my route, which is just doing all the delves one time and then a bunch of specific side quest chains that are really efficient. I would say that my route is like about 30 minutes to an hour faster than just spamming the Skardin delve. But the fact that only doing one thing over and over and over is actually not that bad. I've seen like times of low 2 hours. That's kind of impressive. This is a very, very fast delve. And as you might imagine, even if you're just doing it once, getting all of that additional mob kill XP on top of the one-time completion for the delve, it's really good. Smashing Skardin is one of the best delve variants, period. So, moving on to Earthcrawl Mines. We will switch back over to WoW here. Going down over here, I wish I could have my achievements in order. Unfortunately, I can't. It's just in order of whenever I completed them. So, Earthcrawl Mines is Kidnapped Earthen into Precious Ores into Fiery Grounds. So, Kidnapped Earthen is the one that every single person watching this video, if you've played War Within at all, is familiar with, because when you do the campaign on your very first character, you are forced to do Earthcrawl Mines. And every single time you do Earthcrawl Mines, it is guaranteed to be the Kidnapped Earthen variant. It's just predetermined, it's hard-coded into the campaign. So this is the one where you rescue a bunch of Earthen with Bran, you put them into a train car, and then you go down a tunnel and kill the final boss. Pretty simple, everybody gets it. The nice thing about Earthcrawl, as we'll see, is this is the fastest one. It's not an amazing delve variant, but it is on the faster end of things, and it's definitely faster compared to the other two. So, what this means is while you're leveling your character, you can guarantee that you always get the fastest version of Earthcrawl Mines by doing this delve within the context of the campaign. So you're going to do the initial section of Isle of Dorn, you're going to unlock the campaign version of Earthcrawl Mines, and it will always be Kidnapped Earthen, which is relatively fast, so that works out well for you. So because of that, there's very little point in me actually discussing these other two. I will, but just keep in mind you should never have to do it, because you should always be doing this within the campaign. Precious ores is the one where, as you might imagine, you go around and collect a bunch of ores. The biggest issue with this is that they are scattered really far along the entry room. The kidnapped earthen that you have to free are kind of clustered at the center, so if you're careful, you don't actually pull a lot of the trash. Precious ores, there's ones all the way in each far corner. You have to fully clear the room to get all of them. And most annoyingly, there's a lot of roleplay that you need to do when doing the tunnel at the end. You have to chuck the ore at the earthen that's sleeping on the ground. It'll activate, say a few lines, then clear the path forward. And you have to just keep doing that over and over while killing all of the mobs. It just takes a really long time. It's kind of frustrating. It's not that much worse than kidnapped earthen, but it is just slower. And since you can guarantee this, why would you ever do precious ores? Fiery Grounds is an interesting one. This is where you have to pick up the flamethrower and fight a bunch of waves of mobs. And I actually do kind of like this delve at tier 8. I think it's one of the more fun, interesting variants, but it is very slow. You have to sit through a gigantic gauntlet of mobs. You have to kill a ton of them. And even with the flamethrower, which actually does solid damage, it takes a really long time. So for speed leveling, this is just bad. You should never do it. There's no reason that you should do it because it is in the same one as the guaranteed campaign version. So now that we've gotten all that covered, for Earthcrawl Mines, I'm obviously going to put earthen miners higher than the others, but I'm actually only going to put it at B. I'm going to put it at the very top of B. I'll kind of sort all of these later on. I don't think it's necessarily A, because I actually think there's genuinely a case to be made if you have a ton of XP modifiers of just not even doing the Isle of Dorn campaign and not bothering with Earthcrawl and doing something else. It is nowhere near the efficiency of Dreadpit and some of the other ones that we're going to discuss, but I would say in most cases it is good enough to be worth running, and it's like high A. I might even put it at the top of A. It's really good. Now B, which, let me jog my memory, B is the precious ores, and then it's the flamethrower one. All right, so B is, I would say, down in C tier. There's no reason to ever run this, but it's not really good. Not that much worse than the other ones, but it just ends up being a little bit inefficient. And C I'm going to put in D tier. It's going to be weird saying C I'm putting in D tier. I could rename these to, like, never do this, etc. But I just, for simplicity's sake, standard tier list naming conventions, and I think A, B, C is just a simple enough way to understand it. And hey, I already made the images. That's what we're going with. All right, next up, this is, actually, I need to double check. I want to say this is Fungal Folly, but we can very easily check on the achievements. Yeah, this one's Fungal Folly, and the purple version of the spore is Mycomancer. Some of these have similar icons. Again, I just picked what I thought was going to be the best. So for Fungal Folly, we have Lost Miners, Spreading Decay, and Explorers Competition. Lost Miners is the best out of these. This is just relatively simple. There's a bunch of earthen miners. You have to walk up to them, either interact with them to free them, or sometimes you have to kill mobs. Like there's a cluster of 3 at the center where there's 3 small waves of Nerubians that you, or not Nerubians, spore people that you need to kill. Kill the spore people, free the miners, and then go to the end. It's not insanely fast, but I would say it's not actually that bad, because if you do it efficiently, there's not a lot of movement. It's a relatively small delve, and you don't need to do too much to actually free every single one of the miners. Spreading Decay is really annoying. I don't know if I'm going to put it in D tier, because technically speaking, you can do it efficiently. The main issue that I have with it is sometimes I've noticed it just kind of gets buggy, and there's invisible swirlies that will disrupt you as you try to break the mushroom. So just for clarification, this one, you pick up a big crystal, you channel it into a mushroom, and you have to break down the mushroom, and it shoots out these little things that you need to avoid. Normally, this isn't the worst thing ever, but it just takes a really long time in some cases, and like I said, you can randomly get broken out of the channel, and that just loses you a bit of time. It's just very frustrating. So I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to put this one in D tier because it's slow and I find it super annoying, or if I'm just going to put it like low C tier because technically speaking, it's not as bad as some of the really, really bad Delve variants. I could go either way with it. And Explorers Competition, I kind of in a similar vein, you have to do a lot of these little mini games. Some of them are you have to just beat the Explorer up, which is fine, but one of them requires you to fish 3 times, which fishing is just inherently slow. but also, depending on the bobber speed, can be either really slow or just only kind of slow. Another one, you have to do the whole draw the rings, like little achievement from Legion, and they have a mini one of those. Another is like you have to match these icons. It's just not a fast delve. I think the biggest issue that I have with this, and I'm not going to use this as criteria super often, but sometimes it is worth mentioning, is none of these objectives require you to kill a mob and gain experience from it. So, hypothetically, let's say all three of these variants both took 5 minutes. Lost Miners requires you to kill Fungarian mobs to free the miners. Spreading Decay mostly requires you to channel into a mushroom, but sometimes you kill 1 or 2 mobs on the way there. And in Explorers Competition, a lot of the traditional areas are devoid of mobs, and you spend most of your time doing miscellaneous minigames. Well, none of the minigames give experience. Breaking the mushrooms doesn't give experience. So if all of these did take the same amount of time, hint, they don't, then Lost Miners would still be the fastest because you're also getting a bit of mob kill experience on top of all that. And it may not be much, but it adds up. The thing is, Lost Miners is the fastest out of all of these, even on top of the mob kill experience. So these just fall off really hard. And that makes Fungal Folly a bit of a weird delve because, as you will see on the tier list, I'm going to put Lost Miners in A tier. It's actually pretty good. It's one of the better ones. And then, like I said, I'm slamming these down into... I'm actually going to put this in... Am I going to put it? Yeah, I'm going to put it in D tier. I don't know whether it's better or worse than the Flamethrower one. It's probably better. The Flamethrower one, like I said, I find this one fun to do, but it's really slow. I'm going to be generous and say that the Mushroom one isn't completely awful, but I would not recommend doing it. It's very close to D tier. It's going to be bottom of C tier. The biggest thing here, as you can see, Dread Pit, mostly close together. Earthcrawl, mostly close together. Fungal Folly, it's one of those where you either run it with the best version or you just kind of skip it because it's just not worth your time. Now, Kriegval's, which we've already discussed a little bit, that's what this little bag icon is. That's the one that I parked my character inside. Why am I sitting in Kriegval's Rest while recording this video? I don't know. I just wanted to have the ambient delve background noise without having to edit in music into the video. So that's what we're doing with this one. And we have Lost Keepsakes, Swarming Kobolds, Dagran's Day Out. I kind of touched upon these a little bit, but just to review, Lost Keepsakes is the one that you can see right now. You're going to have to run around and pick up some objects in the ground. Swarming Kobolds, really straightforward. You kill a bunch of mobs and fill up a progress bar and then kill the boss at the end. And Dagran's Day Out is... this one, for whatever reason, I've only seen like once or twice. I've seen Swarming Kobolds a million times, this one only a few times. My memory is very fuzzy on Dagran's Day Out, but I believe it is similar to the other two, except you have Dagran accompanying you, and there's like a few mini side objectives where you have to have Dagran interact with something. Again, I have almost never seen this one. I don't know why the Delve variants just keep bouncing between the same one. I've also recently seen Swarming Kobolds 3 days in a row, is what it is. But on that note, there are very little differences between the three, with the exception of these two have bonus things you need to interact with, and Swarming Kobolds doesn't, so it's just going to be the fastest. Swarming Kobolds is the whole W route. However, I'm going to put pretty much every single one of these into D tier. And I will explain, no, that's the wrong one. C is Dagran's Day Out, so I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to put this into the bottom of C tier. I still don't think it's worth doing. Actually, no, I'm going to put it top of D tier. Now, this might change, and I will quickly say, if the experience was balanced, I would put the Swarming Kobolds into low B tier, and I would put these both into C tier. However, right now, for some reason, I don't know why, Kriegval's Rest gives 30,000%, or not percent, gives 30,000 less experience than every single other delve. So I cannot ever recommend doing Kriegval's Rest when it just gives 1/3 less than every single other delve for the end of completion. And that is a pretty significant chunk, especially because Kriegval's Rest is not one of the faster delves. Like I said, if experience was the same, I'd probably put this one into low B tier. This is the Swarming Kobolds, where you just hold W and kill a bunch of them. It is still a relatively long delve. It's not an extremely long delve. It's not the fastest one out there. But there is still a lot of distance that you have to cover and a lot of mobs that you need to kill. And the only reason why I wouldn't put this one into C tier is because you are getting a lot of mob kill experience in addition to completing the delve. But the problem is, any additional mob kill experience you get that might justify putting it up here instead of, like, down here, you're losing 30,000 experience because the quest is bugged, and it just doesn't give the correct numbers. And don't even get me started on the other two, where they are much slower, and you're still not getting the full experience value. So right now, you should never do Kriegval's Rest for leveling. I don't know why the quest is broken. I'm hoping that Blizzard fixes it in the future, and if I need to go back and make a new version of this tier list when that happens, awesome, I will go and do that. But as it stands, never do Kriegval's Rest. Alright, so as I said before, Mycomancer Cavern is the other one of these little fungal shroom thingies, whatever you want to call it. A, B, and C for these. Let's take a look. Now, I will give you a heads up. This delve really sucks. So Missing Pigs, this is the one where there's a bunch of, well, as the name implies, pigs scattered throughout the delve, and you have to interact with them. And when you interact with the pig, there's a chance that it becomes hostile and you have to kill it, and there's a chance that it just turns friendly and runs away. This is really annoying. I should probably note before I discuss the others that Mycomancer Cavern in general is just one of the worst delves. Well, I put Kriegval's at the bottom, and it's not going to go below Kriegval's because it is giving correct experience. The delve itself is really, really long because you have to go all the way up this cliff and then all the way back down, and pretty much every single variant of it requires you to use the entire space within the delve. Some of them even more. They take you along like the little water section, which is wild. And you have tons of mobs that you need to fight, even if they aren't required as part of the delve. You need to kill your way through gigantic packs of mobs to actually interact with the objectives. And again, mob kill experience, not terrible, but keep in mind that with Smashing Skardin, you get an insane amount of free mob kills that count as elite mobs just by pressing one button and hitting like a single AoE spell, and they all instantly die. And this one gives you less experience, I would say probably like 1/3 of the experience as a total Smashing Skardin run, and takes like 3 times as long to actually run through. So we need to keep everything in relation to one another. And Mycomancer Cavern, while Missing Pigs is not awful, it is very RNG. Because if every single one of the pigs turns hostile, and you have to kill every single one of them, it really, really, really sucks. It's really slow. But if all of them are friendly, then it's like, it's okay. It's not amazing for the reasons I've already outlined, but at least you get to effectively ignore the objective. More realistically, it ends up being somewhere in the middle. 4 pigs are friendly, 5 pigs are hostile, and it's like, fine, but still not amazing compared to a lot of the other ones. And then both of these other ones are just a skip. Oh my god, they are so bad. Great Scavenger Hunt, you have to click on like a million different items, and they're each one defended by a ton of mobs. You have to kill all the mobs to get through it. A lot of times it's only one big elite mob that just takes forever to kill. It's just so bad. And Mushroom Morsel is the one that I talked about, where you actually kill the boss at the start, and you get like a mushroom that makes you high, and you talk to Magni and like run around on a purple elephant or something. It's really weird. And you have to collect a bunch of stuff and kill bad guys, which, yeah, they're just big mobs scattered throughout the delve. It's a bit of a goofy variant. It's not a fast variant, so this one is relatively easy, aside from the fact that, you know, this one is very RNG. I'm going to go ahead and put this one in low C tier, because it is random. I would say if every single one of the pigs turned friendly, this would still be in B tier. So I'm going to split the difference, because if every single one of the pigs turned hostile, this is solidly in D tier. So I'm just going to say Mycomancer Cavern. I'm going to go ahead and, on average, I'm going to put it ahead of the Crystal one in Fungal Folly. And then both of these... where do I put these? I'm going to put them here. Which one is worse? The Great Scavenger Hunt is worse. So I'm going to put them there. They're pretty bad delves. You'll notice we're starting to fill up the D tier column. There's a lot of delve variants that are really, really, really slow. There are a bunch of really good ones that we haven't gotten to yet, but a lot of these are awful. So Nightfall Sanctum is the next one here. The guy with the little daggers. This is a very weird delve to rank. How do I put this? So let's first go back to WoW and review the different variants. So Dark Ritual, I'm trying to remember which one is which. Dark Ritual is... Crap, I forget so many of these. They feel very similar. Signal Noise, I know, is the one where you have to send flares to disrupt the circles. It's basically you just throw a flare into a corner, get the circles to move around, and then click on an object. I want to say Chiron's Assault is you jump onto a ballista, shoot to the end, and then you have to... Yeah, Chiron's Assault, you click on these little things that you put on the ground to disrupt these big bubbles, and then Dark Ritual, you click on a bunch of braziers, and that one you do from start to finish instead of Chiron's Assault, which you do from end to the start. It's kind of weird because a lot of these are very similar in terms of how you do them. They all involve interacting with something as you progress through the delve, and you need to complete the entirety of the delve no matter what, because as we'll see, I don't know if it's come up yet, but some delves you can kind of skip certain sections of them with movement abilities, and that saves you a little bit of time. Some little hallways end up being a lot more tedious than others, but in the case of Nightfall Sanctum, you kind of need to full clear the delve in all three variants. And the only thing that I will note is that Chiron's Assault is particularly bad, because Chiron's Assault has a unique end boss where it's like a council of 3 mobs, and for certain specs, it can be a very big challenge to actually take them down. They are super annoying to deal with. So that one is the worst by far. The other ones, I would say, are both comparable, but neither is good. They're all pretty long. There's a lot of things that you need to interact with. None of them are particularly amazing, but I would also say it's not on the level of Mycomancer Cavern, where it's just absolutely horrendous. The quest gives full experience, unlike Kriegval's. Okay, I think I've made up my mind. Here's how I'm going to rank them. So, what was the bad one? Chiron's Assault. Chiron's Assault is B. So Chiron's Assault I'm going to put in D tier. I'm going to put this... yeah, I'll put it above the bad Fungal. Actually, no. Because certain specs really struggle with the final boss, well, you know, for a Guardian Druid, for instance, this one might not be awful. It's not fast, but it's maybe on the same level as the other two. The specs that struggle with the end boss here really struggle with the end boss, and this ends up just being kind of an impossible delve for them. I would say for the other two, I'm gonna put them in C tier. And then let me refer to it. A is Dark Ritual, C is Signal Noise. I like Signal Noise better than Dark Ritual. If I move that around, there we go. They're very comparable, though. Nightfall Sanctum it's kind of like I said with C tier, one of those where if it is not Chiron's Assault, and even sometimes if it is Chiron's Assault, if I'm leveling something like a Guardian Druid, I don't necessarily always plan to skip this, but it's one of those delves where I'm always like, I'm only going to do it if I completely run out of stuff to do, and then I never run out of efficient stuff to do. By the time I've completed the really good delves, I've hit level 80, and I never have time to actually get around to Nightfall Sanctum. So let's say you really enjoy leveling through delves, and you just hate doing certain quest lines. You really don't want to do the Isle of Dorn side quest for the millionth time. It is not a terrible option. It's not as bad as the other ones. But would I recommend it over some other stuff? No, probably not. It's firmly in C tier. So for the Cobus delves, it's going to be a little bit tricky. I'll have to show you the actual icon. Take my word for it, this is Sinkhole. And you can see down here, there's another water one. This is Waterworks. Let me make sure it's back in the correct spot. And then this one over here is Tak-Rethan. They're all fairly interchangeable, just generic water symbols. But as for Sinkhole, this one is, I would say, one of the more interesting delves. So we'll pop over to WoW, Sinkhole Stories. We have Illusory Rescue, Rain's Gambit, and Lurking Terror. So the names on this, the second two I always get confused. Illusory Rescue is the one where you have to interact with a bunch of Arathi for the first half, and some of them are Cobus that are like using fake Arathi as like little anglerfish lures, and the others are real Arathi. This is kind of like the aforementioned Kobold one, where if you interact with all the Arathi that have bubbles around their heads, and don't have the gigantic, obvious fish monster hiding behind them, you know that they're the real ones, and they're not going to trigger a fight with a bonus Cobus. So you can skip a lot of the intended pitfalls in that first section by just looking for the correct Arathi and only clicking on those. But it's not an insanely quick delve, because you still need to, at the end, clear through a bunch of different mobs, and it takes a while. This one is probably going to be C tier. It's not D tier. It's not, like, absolutely terrible, but I definitely try to avoid this whenever I'm leveling my characters, and usually only do Sinkhole if it's one of the other two. That being said, Lurking Terror is also really annoying. I generally try to avoid this one too. This is the one with the gigantic Leviathan that's kind of sitting in the middle. You don't actually interact with it, but you have to kill a bunch of Leviathan manipulators. The reason why I don't mind this one as much is because, especially on leveling characters, if you have, like, you know, leveling gear, the little 520-something BOEs that you buy, you can kill them relatively quickly. They have some annoying, like, avoidable AoE abilities that can make things difficult, but if you just burn them fast, that won't be an issue. And then you just kind of run through the delve, pull a bunch of mobs, murder them super quickly, and there's nothing that you need to stop and interact with, which is nice, at least. So I definitely prefer this one to Illusory Rescue, but not by much. But the main reason why all of this is kind of a moot point is that Rain's Gambit is really, really good. It's significantly faster than a lot of the others. At a first glance, it may not appear to be super good, because there's actually 3 different objectives that you need to complete. You have to pick up some urns in the ground, you have to kill a bunch of Kobus, and then you have to kill the final boss. What's interesting, though, is that you get this ability that lets you jump really high into the air and then land on a targeted location, and the range on the leap is insane. You can jump halfway across the delve. You can actually, from the very start of the delve, land in the final boss room. If you get, like, a perfect angle, you can just barely get the targeted reticule into the final boss room, and it actually leaps you there. You could skip the entire thing. Now, you would still need to then go back and kill a bunch of mobs to get credit for killing Kobus and looting a bunch of stuff in the ground, but it is actually worth skipping a good chunk of the delve, because certain sections of it don't have a lot of mobs, they don't have a lot of urns that you need to interact with on the ground. So I usually clear the very first section, leap down to the middle, clear out that section, interact with all the stuff, leap to the final hallway, because there's little gaps in the floor that you can jump across, and then clear out that section, kill the final boss, and I'm done. And it is about half as fast to complete this one as Illusory Rescue and Lurking Terror. So Rain's Gambit is one of the better delves, period, and it is significantly better than Illusory Rescue and Lurking Terror, so ideally, if you're trying to do a speedrun, which obviously I do a lot of speedruns, I'm thinking about this from a speedrun perspective, but I'm also trying to give you information if you're just leveling casually, then this definitely influences how I choose to do Sinkhole. So let me refer to it. Illusory is A, Rain's Gambit is B, Lurking Terror is C. So Rain's Gambit, I'm going to put in A. I'm actually going to put it... I'm going to put it ahead of Earthen Miners for Fungal Folly, but Dread Pit is just still so insane. Even the Gems version of Dread Pit is really good. And then Illusory Rescue, I'm going to put in... They're both going in C. Neither one is D. Which one is better? Probably Leviathan Manipulator. And I'm going to put it ahead of Mycomancer. I think I'm happy with that. Yeah. I really don't like the other Waterworks or Sinkhole variants. They're relatively slow. And, okay, so next up, we have Skittering Breach. So Skittering Breach, this is the icon, right? Yeah, this is Spiral Weave, this is Skittering Breach. Well, no, let me pop over to WoW. Yep, Skittering Breach stories. Skittering Breach is really nice. I would say this is another Dread Pit in the sense that all 3 variants are really, really, really good. I feel like, which one of these goes into... One of them probably has to go into S tier, because all 3 are very quick. None of them are going to go into B tier. It's a question of, do I put all of them in A tier, or do I put 1 in S tier and 2 in A? So let me start by explaining them. The names are very generic, and I'm trying to remember which is which. Old Rituals is the one where there's a bunch of Nerubian casters, and you have to kill the Nerubians, interrupt their casts, and then go to the final boss and kill that one. Renalash Beckons is you have to kill or attack the speaker, and then the speaker runs away, he summons a few mobs to fight you, you fight him again, he summons a few more mobs, and then it's just kill a bunch of the cultists, and then run to the end. And then you go to the end, you fight the speaker a 3rd time, he's the final boss, and you kill him, move along. Shadow Realm, at the very start, you interact with the portal, you get an item that lets you zip around. It's like little light boots, you get a dash, kind of like Fell Rush for Demon Hunter. And this one's a little bit misleading. A lot of people seem to think it's really fast, because they're like, holy crap, I got a Fell Rush ability that I can just zip around. And technically, if you want to, you could jump and zip straight to the end. But there's nothing there. You do need to complete the objective in order to actually finish the delve. And while it is a fast delve, and you get this cool little ability, it has probably the slowest out of the things that you need to do. There's a lot of shadow totems, and you need to dash around with your little Fel Rush thing to clear the shadow puddles. Then you kill the totem, and then you move on to the next one. It takes a little bit longer. It's kind of offset by the fact that you get the super OP Fel Rush that lets you skip a lot of unnecessary mobs and just beeline straight to the next objective. But because the objective takes longer than, say, killing a Nerubian Ritualist, it doesn't actually end up being that much faster. And similarly, while Renalosh Beckons, the one where you fight the Speaker, is pretty simple, because you just beat him up, kill some mobs, beat him up again, kill some mobs, kill a bunch of mobs, beat him up a third time, you're done. There is a little bit of roleplay with, like, how the waves of mobs come at you. It's nowhere near the level of, like, the Rain's Flamethrower one in Earthcrawl Mines. It's very fast, but it's still a little bit slow. Old Rituals I like because it's a very short delve, and you just run up, you round up a bunch of mobs, drag them onto the Nerubian, blast them, move on to the next one, blast them again. It is a hold W delve, and it's a very quick hold W delve with a lot of little mobs that all give you experience. Not like Skarden smashing and Dread Pit, but still pretty good. It's so hard to say. It's definitely, I should note, Smashing Skarden is going to be the #1 delve on this list. Obviously, kind of started off with the best there. Nothing is going above it, but there might be other delves in S tier. There will be other delves in S tier. I'm debating on whether I put Old Rituals in S tier. So that would be A, Renalosh Beckons, B, Shadow Realm, C. So real quick, B, C, both of these go in here. I'm going to put... you know what? I'm going to put both of them above the gems. Yeah, I think that's fair. Skittering Breach is really good. It's very close, though. I could go either way with these three. And then for the Nerubian Ritualists, I am going to put this in S tier, because I think if this doesn't deserve S tier, other than Smashing Skarden, what does? So it is definitely, out of the three, the best, but this is very close. Like, this could just very easily be A, B, C in the A tier. They're all very, very, very comparable. Okay, so now Spiral Weave. This is another strange one. Where's Spiral Weave? There we go, Spiral Weave. So from the Weaver with Love, this is another one where it's kind of like Kriegval's. I've seen Strange Disturbances maybe 75% of the time that I've done this delve. And as a result, my memory of the other two is a little bit fuzzy. Tortured Hostages I did just do like the other day, so it's fresh in my mind. This one, you have to kill a bunch of packs of Nerubians, then you free a bunch of hostages, you have to interact with them, which is like a little bit annoying, and then you kill a final boss. From the Weaver with Love, I'm going to be honest and say I don't remember super well. Yes, I remember this one. It's the one with the grappling hook. You have to use the grappling hook to jump around, and it's similar to Tortured Hostages in the sense that you were just kind of holding W through killing stuff and interacting with objects. I think you have to interact with like little webbed wrap things, and by using the grappling hook, you can skip around a little bit and avoid certain mobs. It's not the fastest delve ever, but whereas Tortured Hostages requires you to just kind of hold W down the middle and then take little detours to kill the hostages, you can skip around a little bit with From the Weaver. Notably, the final hallway, you can skip a lot of the mobs by grappling hooking through the rafters, which is kind of neat. I haven't done this one in a while, but I do remember it now that I remember that it's the grappling hook one. And Strange Disturbances, like I said, this is the one I get the most, and it is also the best. This is the really weird one. I almost said strange one, which I guess would be kind of redundant. But you kill one mob at the start, then you interact with a chest, and then a bunch of mobs attack you, you get teleported to the end, and then you go through the delve backwards. Now, at a glance, it may seem kind of slow, and it's definitely not on the level of, you know, any of those super fast delves. But the fact that you skip a good section at the beginning, and most notably, you get a very easy final boss with only a handful of mobs instead of this big single target, like beefy mob that you have to chip away at, that saves you a lot of time. But also, while you are interacting with a handful of mobs as you go, it's random which ones you get. And I find that a lot of the mobs in Nerubian delves are massive pains in the ass. They will spam cast on you, they will run away from you, like root you and stuff like that. And because you get a randomized assortment of mobs from different delves, a lot of times you're just getting like generic melee mobs, kobolds, or the... I forget the name of the evil Wrathy, the Renalash dudes. You get those guys, and you can kind of round a bunch of them up and AoE them down very easily. So clearing out the mobs isn't actually that difficult. It's a pretty easy straight shot all the way to the end. You can also skip a lot of trash towards the end compared to, say, Tortured Hostages, which has a bunch of elite beetles that you need to fight. So there's a lot more stuff involved with it. But on average, I would say I find that this one ends up being faster to complete, at least while leveling, than the other two. So I'm going to say that's the best. Spiral Weave is going to fall very squarely in the middle. There's no terrible versions. None of these are D tier. I think... Which one? I want to put Tortured Hostages in C. That's my Spiral Weave A. So Spiral Weave A, I'm going to put in C. I'm going to put it probably at the top of C tier. It's on the slower side of things, but it's not that bad. And I would probably still put it ahead of Nightfall Sanctum. From the Weaver with Love, I'm putting in B tier, and Strange Disturbances... Yeah, so I'll put that in B tier. Is it better or worse than the Kobold one? I've seen the Kobold one a ton. I've only seen this once or twice. I'm going to tentatively put it below the Kobold one. Kobold one has a lot of interacting. I think that's fair. I'm actually going to move this up to low B. I would definitely prefer this over Nightfall Sanctum. And this one, do I put it low A or high B? I still feel that it takes a little bit of additional time to complete because you have to interact with all the guys. A lot of the earthen that you rescue, for instance, in the Fungal Folly earthen one, which I'm using kind of as the bottom of A tier right now, they are freed automatically when you kill the mob defending them, and you don't need to actually sit there and, spend 3 seconds right-clicking them. And that may seem trivial, but, that little time save adds up. So it's not a huge difference, but I think it's enough that I'm going to put it there. And I'm going to be real, just kind of part of my brain really likes the idea of all of Spiral Weave being in B tier, but I could go either way with this. I think that in a lot of the speedruns I've done, I have also skipped Spiral Weave at the very end because, again, it's like one of those things where I was going to do it next, but then I happened to hit, level 80, I queued for a dungeon, I got a good dungeon, and then I just didn't end up doing Spiral Weave. It is kind of, when I think about delves, on the lower end of my mental priority list, so I can't really justify putting this above Lost Miners, because I will usually prioritize this delve variant if it is up, which means I think it deserves to be ahead. Now we get to talk about one of my favorite delves, maybe my favorite delve, at least favorite delve variant, which is Tak-Rethan Abyss. Unfortunately, the main part of the icon, the little anglerfish Cobus, is being obscured by the ABC, but what can you do? I need a standardized placement of the little letters there. So let's pop over to WoW again, take a look at the Tak-Rethan stories. We have Goblin Mischief as A, Niffin Napping as B, and Pheromone Fury as C. So I'm just going to skip right ahead and talk about Pheromone Fury because this is going into S tier. And if you recall watching my delve video, I said this is the single fastest delve. So in terms of the amount of time that it takes to get from the start to the finish, kill the final boss, and move on, this one is the fastest, even faster than Smashing Skarden. The reason why for leveling, I'm going to put it just below Smashing Skarden on the tier list, so let's just go ahead and lock that in. Tak-Rethan right there, is because while both of these are ludicrously fast, Tak-Rethan is faster, but you get significantly more mob kill experience in Smashing Skarden, so in terms of a single completion of these two delves, Smashing Skarden is going to outweigh it. And there's a reason why nobody spams the Tak-Rethan Pheromone one to get, efficient experience while leveling. That's not a strat for this one, like it is for Smashing Skarden, because while doing the Tak-Rethan Pheromone one is extremely good for the end of completion quest, you go in, get to the end, get your 90,000 experience, bing, bang, boom, you're out of there. Really great. But there's no real advantage to spamming this over and over like there is with Smashing Skarden. So it has to go a step below. It's just slightly worse. But it is an amazing delve. And I also, when I was talking in my delve video about a month ago about what the best delve is to reach tier 8, if you're on a new character, new account, and you're trying to get your delve tier leveled up, the best way to do it is, if this one is up, just run Pheromone Fury a bunch of times. Effectively, if you're unfamiliar, if you didn't watch that video, there's a bunch of pheromone crates. You run through the delve, you right-click in them, you break all the pheromones, and because there's no interact time, you can just beeline through the delve, keep clicking on the pheromone crates. You'll drag a bunch of mobs along with you. They'll keep attacking you. But you can get halfway through, you can activate the checkpoint, jump off a cliff, effectively suicide your character, respawn, all the mobs will reset, break the last few pheromone crates, and then run to the final boss. And you don't really need to kill anything. In fact, when I'm leveling characters, I just do that, but then I kill all the mobs, because on a really geared leveling character like a Guardian Druid, for instance, you can just round up an entire delve and AoE it down with, like, Lunar Beam, with the Elun's Chosen talent tree. Not everybody will be able to do that, but every class can jump off a cliff, reset the mobs, and then run to the end, and it's still really fast. But if you are playing a Guardian Druid, hey, that's a bunch of free mob kill experience, so it works out really well. A lot of them are easy to kill. So this is just a very fast delve variant in general. As you might imagine, neither of these are going to compare. As a result, you always want it to be Pheromone Fury. However, in all of the test speedruns that I've done, I have never managed to get Pheromone Fury up. It has always been like, oh, today's Smashing Skarden Day and a bunch of other really good delves. Definitely a good delve day. Unfortunately, it's not Pheromone Fury. So I have still done a bunch of these other variants when I run delves for my 70 to 80 speedrun tests, and they're not bad. Notably, I would say Goblin Mischief is slightly better. So just to review the variants, Goblin Mischief, you run around, you pick up a bunch of crates, you drag them to the end, there's a big broken down mech that you have to repair, and then you hop in the mech. It like feels like roleplay, so a lot of times roleplay is considered bad because it wastes a lot of time, but in practice, it's not actually that slow. You just kind of blast a bunch of Kobus, and then you're good to go. It's rather quick, and because the rest of the delve, grabbing the little goblin spare part crates, is not that slow, it ends up being an okay delve. Not amazing, but also not terrible. Niffin napping I find to be really annoying. There are a bunch of mobs that you need to interact with at the start, and then you have to kill a ton of mobs at the end. It is not the worst delve ever, and Tak-Rethan is just a very short delve in terms of, like, the play space, so you don't run around a ton, but there's just a lot of stuff that you gotta do, so it just ends up not being my favorite. So going back to the tier list for ranking these final two, I'm going to put Goblin Mischief at A tier. I'm going to put it... Where in A tier do I want it? This is Rain's Gambit. Actually, on further review, I want to put Rain's Gambit ahead of Dread Pit Gems. I really like this variant. It's pretty good. And I think it's notable that this one is just a good bit worse than Smashing Skarden. Tak-Rethan Goblin Mech... I think it's fair to put this below the Lost Miners for Fungal Folly. They're very comparable. The roleplay on the mech probably puts it a little bit low, but they're not bad. It's not too slow to complete this one. For Niffin napping, I'm going to put this in B tier. It's not bad enough to warrant C. You should always do Tak-Rethan at some point, even if it is Niffin napping the worst one, which B tier is kind of like, yeah, maybe put this at the end of your run, but still do it. Where do I want to put it? It's probably ahead of the Kobold one. Is it ahead of... This is From the Weaver with Love, and this is the Earthcrawl Mines one. I actually like this location for it. I'd rather do the other two better versions of Spiral Weave, and I'd definitely rather do the best version of Earthcrawl than Niffin napping. So, yeah, I think this is actually the perfect spot to put it. Okay, I know that next is technically Underkeep. I'm actually going to skip over it just because it has a D variant, and that's going to take me a bit of time to explain, so we're just going to do Waterworks, even though it is lower alphabetically, whatever. Waterworks is another very polarizing one, because it's on the faster end, but there is one very slow, I don't want to say very slow, because it's actually not going to be D tier, but it's on the slower end compared to A and B. I forget which variant it is. Let's check the achievement before I get too far ahead of myself. Waterworks stories. So variant A is Captured Engineers, variant B is Trust Issues, variant C is Stomping Some Sense. Captured Engineers is really straightforward. It's kind of like a lot of the other delve things we've talked about. It's like the Rescue Miners ones, where there's just a bunch of earthen, you click in the earthen, you rescue them, and then you run to the end. It kind of seems like a lot of times in these delves, Blizzard came up with one or two cool ideas, and then for the third one, they're like, let's just put in one where you rescue generic earthen miners in like half of the delves. There's one in like Fungal Folly, Waterworks, a bunch of others. But it ends up being okay, because for a lot of those, that is the only objective. You're just interacting with Earthen, and this one is no exception. You run around through the Waterworks, you click on some Earthen, in this case engineers, rescue them, and then run to the end and kill the final boss. It is still slower than some of the faster delves just because the Waterworks itself is a long delve. It's like really lengthy. So I don't love doing Waterworks, but I usually include it just because Dread Pit is really, really good, and Waterworks is close enough to Dread Pit, you know, in the Ringing Deeps, that none of the variants are terrible enough that it's kind of always worth popping over and getting one of those done. And Captured Engineers is on the faster end because you do just kind of hold W through it, click on the Engineers, and then run to the end. Similarly, Stomping Some Sense, you pick up a pair of boots at the beginning, where after you use it, it stomps on nearby kobold corpses and gets you gears from the kobolds. And because you don't need to kill every single kobold in the delve, you only need to kill like half of them. What ends up just happening is you run down the main hallways, round up every kobold you can, murder them in a big stack, stomp on their bodies, get like a big chunk of gears, and then just rinse repeat. You do that over and over. And if you do that correctly, it's kind of the same speed as Captured Engineers. There's actually no noticeable difference between these two. The only difference is this one, Captured Engineers, you skip a handful of mobs and you have to interact with the engineers, so I'll probably put it slightly below. Is this one you get like a tiny bit more mob kill experience. And then Trust Issues. This is where you have a kobold following you around that you need to lead to specific locations, talk to him, defend him as waves of enemies attack him, and then move on to another location throughout the delve. In case that isn't obvious just by the description, it is very slow. Much slower than the other two. It's not D tier, but it's going to be low C, which we can rank now. So Trust Issues was variant B. Captured Engineers is A, and C is Stomping Some Sense. Do I want to put these in A or B tier? I'm going to put them in A tier, just because I would much rather do... Yeah, I'm actually going to put it ahead of Tak-Rethan. I'm even going to put it ahead of the Earthen Miners in Fungal Folly. And then I'm just going to put it here. It's, like I said, Waterworks is a very long delve, so it's not going to be faster than like Skittering Breach. It's definitely not faster than like Tak-Rethan Pheromones, Rain's Gambit, where you can skip straight to the end, and obviously Smashing Skarden. But it is one of the better delves, and because both of these just require you to hold W through to the end, it's really not that bad. It ends up being pretty quick. And then I'm going to chuck Trust Issues all the way down here in C tier. That's probably a good place for it. I'm going to put it below the Ore one. Even though you never do this one, it's still not that bad. Trust Issues just has too much roleplay, but I definitely prefer it to like the annoying Waterworks, Mycomancer, etc. Crazy. Yeah, I'm noticing Mycomancer is really low, but I almost never run this in any of my speedruns. It's just so inefficient. So I think that actually is probably a fitting placement for it. And now, finally, last and kind of least, actually, Underkeep. So Underkeep is notable in that it is the only delve with 4 variants. The other problem with it having 4 variants is only one of them is actually good. There's going to be 2 of these that I will probably end up putting into D tier, and the other one is not going to go very high. And then there is actually one relatively good Underkeep variant. The only thing is you have a 1 out of 4 chance of seeing it every day, which is lower than all of the other variants in delves. So that makes it really hard to play around. So we're going to pop back over to WoW. Underkeep variants. It's the most recent one that I earned because, you know, hard to see all of them. So Torture Victims, Weaver Rescue, Evolved Research, and Runaway Evolution. The one that I think most people are familiar with is Runaway Evolution. This is the one with the 3 big guys that like run through the delve, and you have to grab a pheromone thing, you have to run around, click on these pheromone baskets, then you have to find the guys running through the delve, drop something so that they run into it, and then kill them, and all of them have an insane amount of HP. It is really, really, really annoying, and this one, probably unsurprisingly to most people, is going straight into the fucking bin. This is D tier, this is terrible. And Weaver Rescue, this one, I think I have only ever seen one time. I actually had to look up somebody's POV of it when I was about to make this video just to jog my memory of what this one actually does, because I never see it. Part of the problem with Underkeep having 4 variants. I forget the exact objectives, but it is kind of similar to Torture Victims, which I'll talk about in a second, and that you have to interact with a bunch of guys to free them, then you have to run down into like the side rooms, and in the side rooms you have to click on a bunch of other guys to rescue them. You're rescuing a bunch of like little dudes around the delve, and then once you've rescued all the little dudes spread across the delve, you go and you fight the final boss. And this one is not very good. Torture Victims, similarly, the biggest issue with the Underkeep is that it is a gigantic delve. There's so many side rooms, which is why Runaway Evolution sucks so much. You have to grab a bunch of stuff and then hunt down the guys that are running through the side rooms. Torture Victims is a little bit more straightforward in that you just, after a few mobs at the start, you have to run through every room and click on a bunch of these guys. But a lot of them require multiple clicks to free. You have to click on these little time devices. You click 1 node, 2 node, 3 node, and then it frees a single mob, which is the exact opposite of things like the Fungal Folly one, where you just kill a mob and it gets automatically freed without you having to click anything. So it just really, really sucks. And then Evolved Research is the good one that I was mentioning before. Complete opposite of everything we've discussed. There is no access to the side rooms. You kill a bunch of mobs at the start, you run into the middle, you kill a bunch of mobs there, and then you go straight to the final boss. And it feels a little bit slow in the immediate moment because you have to fight waves of enemies, which normally feels like it takes a bit too long. But if you kill them fast enough, you get to skip most of the delve and just go straight to the end. And that makes it actually rather fast. It's not going to be really high up there because it still does have timed waves of mobs that you're fighting. But especially compared to the other ones, oh man, it is much faster. So let's rank these things. Let me refer to it. So first off, Evolved Research, the good one, that is our C here. I'm not sure where exactly I put it. I think I want to put it... I don't want to put it above Skittering Breach or Spiral Weave. I think this is a good place for it. This is kind of like the best variant of both Spiral Weave, Underkeep, and Earthcrawl Mines are all kind of tied together at the top of B tier, and that feels fitting. Because none of these are amazing delves, but if the good variant is up, and thankfully Earthcrawl, you can guarantee this good variant, if it's up, you might as well do it. It's not a bad variant, it just takes a while. It's also kind of like off in the corner of Ashkahet, which is a different issue. I don't want to include that necessarily in the rankings, but I think it is worth mentioning. Whereas, you know, Dreadpit, Skittering Breach, Waterworks, Earthcrawl, Fungal Folly are all pretty easy to access from where you start the expansion off in. Ashkahet, you have to go all the way down in there and then fly into the corner of the zone to reach it. There's no side quest nearby where you would naturally head in there. Like Fungal Folly, for instance, the side quests around the delve are really good. So you'll naturally want to go in there right after you complete that side quest chain, and it doesn't really lose you any time traveling to the delve. It's a minuscule time loss, so I'm not really taking that as points against it, but I think it's worth noting for a video that is, again, primarily about leveling efficiency. As for the other variants, so A is Torture Victims, B is Weaver Rescue, D is Runaway Evolution. Runaway Evolution, D goes into D tier. That's quite fitting, I suppose. As for where exactly I put it, it's above Kriegval's, the crappy ones, because, again, the quest being broken really screws these. It's probably still better than the Flamethrower one. I'm going to put it below the Mycomancer Cavern variants because these ones kind of suck, but they are not as bad as this. So yeah, it deserves to be there. A and B, they're both going into C tier. Where do I put them in C tier? So A is Torture Victims, B is Weaver Rescue. Weaver Rescue, my memory is fuzzy on. I'm going to kind of put them together when I rank this because I'm fuzzy on exactly what B is. I've seen it so few times. And let's go ahead and put this... that feels good. Yeah, the more I think about it, I really dislike the other Sinkhole variants. They're like just barely good enough to sometimes be worth doing, but I really don't like having to do them. Uh, yeah. Yeah, I'd much rather just do Underkeep than the crappy Sinkhole variants. It's something about being underwater. I mean, I don't hate the underwater delves that much. They're not, it's not the underwater thing in particular, but underwater in conjunction with like the crap that you need to do for this one, it just doesn't feel fun. So I think that's fitting. I think that is a good assessment of where I'd put it. I am just looking over it real quick. Yeah, I'm quite happy with the rankings here. I don't really think there is much that I would change. I tried to, move them around as I progress through, so there shouldn't be any major last-second sweeping changes. But yeah, that's it. Actually, oh my god, I just exactly hit an hour. I had to pause the recording a few times to respond to stuff, but the final time should be at almost dead on 1 hour, so that perfect. You know what? I'm just going to stop myself here. Thank you for watching. Obviously, if you are watching this, it is kind of a companion video to my full 70 to 80 leveling guide, which I'll be posting on my main channel. If you have not seen that, go check it out. You'll probably find a lot of additional useful information. And I will include the link to this tier list in the video description if you really feel like ranking them yourself. I don't know. Maybe that's something you want to do. But anyways, that's it for the video. I will see you in the next one. Peace.